Welcome to the Resilient Butterfly Podcast. My goal is to share inspiring stories of healing and recovery through many diverse approaches and models. Our guests bring incredible lived experiences, insights, and or professional expertise, each with their own unique path. While we highlight and celebrate these stories, our intention is to inform, inspire, and demonstrate resilience and creativity. This podcast does not endorse any one approach. We believe there is more than one way to heal, and we're here to showcase the resilience and possibilities that exist. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Resilient Butterfly. We are so excited to have Adrienne and Johnny Lipscomb with us today. They have written a book, The Painting and the Piano, and not only that, but they have an incredible story which is different but yet similar in the regard of childhood abuse and trauma, and how it all ultimately led to alcohol and drug addiction and their own family system story. Adrienne and Johnny came together with sobriety, filled with hope, inspiration, and love that led them to marry and write the book. And I'm so excited. I've read the book. However, there's so many different things that in this book that I know that you as a guest will be able to tell everyone. And you wrote the book, but not only wrote the book, you lived the story. So welcome. I really love to have you both here.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So I usually start with, where would you like to begin? Where you are now or where you were when you were children? Because you both have opposite stories, but yet so similar in the respect. And let me start this way. How did you come up with the title and to write a book together about all of this?
Well, the title, The Painting and the Piano, happened when we pretty soon after we first met. Adrienne and her 3 daughters moved into my house, and Adrienne kept asking me, "What's down in the basement? What is that wrapped up?" And I go, "Well, that's a baby grand piano." And she goes, "Why don't you ever put it up?" Well, it never occurred to me that I should put up this piano. It had been on skids and wrapped in a padding, movers padding, since I was 9 years old. And I was 45 years old at the time. I inherited from my mother, who passed away from the disease, when I was 9 years old, and went from house to house in St. Louis and moved to Texas, moved back to St. Louis to 2 houses, and I never unwrapped it, never even thought about unwrapping it. And I went to work one day, and I came home, and Adrienne had some workers put it up in the living room. Wow. And when it was put up, I came home from work, and I turned the corner, and I saw the piano, and around the perimeter is gold etching that was just emblazed in my brain. So as soon as I saw that, I went racing back to I was a 9-year-old boy in my living room where the piano sat and watched. And it wasn't good memories for me. It's the cigarette burns in the carpet, in the sofa, the spilled drinks, the knocked over Christmas trees. And around that time it was Thanksgiving, and my father and my sister came over for Thanksgiving. And they walked into the front door, into the hall, and they saw the piano. And I could see the exact same thing happen to them. They went racing back in time, and you could have heard a pin drop. The next day, I hung a painting in the front hall, and it was a painting that Adrienne's mother had painted. And she came down the stairs with this huge glowing smile, and it was just such a happy memory for her. And for years, people have been telling us that we should write a book. We should, because we have so many similarities and parallels. And I just said out of the blue, I go, if we ever write this stupid book, we should call it The Painting and the Piano. We didn't even think about it after that time until we started writing it years later. And so that's how the title came to be, The Painting and the Piano.
That's incredible. So I remember the piano in your story in the living room, but was it your mom or generations before that actually played the piano?
Nobody actually ever played. It was more of a place where you put pictures, and every now and then at Christmas somebody would bang on it. And but other than that, it just witnessed my upbringing as a little child.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And what's the story behind the painting?
So my mom would always sit in this one spot on the couch in the living room, and she was always like knitting or cross-stitching or but she always sat there. And the painting was above. There were several paintings, pictures. And so I said to there was, it's an older woman with this little girl with knee socks. And I knew that she painted it. So I asked her, like, is that me? And she said, yes, that's you. So I had such a love for this painting. I didn't know until she passed, I never paid attention, that she painted it. It said in 1962. So it couldn't have been me because I wasn't even there yet. But
right. But she made it into a story. It was about you.
Into a story. So, so it has really fond memories for me.
So I know you're talking about your mother, and this is your adopted mother.
Correct.
And do you want to go there?
Sure.
With your biological parents and what happened that you were actually given up for adoption?
Yeah. So I was born addicted to heroin in Bellevue Hospital. My biological mother arrived. She was sent there by cab because she went to a private hospital and they said, we don't take junkies here. And she was hemorrhaging. And she had signed me up at Jewish Child Care Foster Agency while she was pregnant. And so all I know is I went through detox, and then I was placed in temporary foster care. And then I came to my parents, where the painting is, with my mom and dad, B and Will Kahn, when I was 10 months old. And I didn't even know I had biological parents until I was like 5 or 6 when they sat me down, because now they came back in the picture. Prior to that, I believe Elaine was in jail or prison, and Herb was in Miami Beach, Florida, raising my biological sister and with relatives. So, yeah, she sat me down and said, you have another mommy and daddy, and made it real positive. And we went into New York City, and I met them for the first time in the foster agency.
It must have been really devastating for your parents.
I'm sure they never let on. My mom was just, and I was like, oh, great, more presents, 2 mommies and daddies. But,
Right.
As time went on, they wanted to see more of me. They would come to Long Island. They would be a no-show or hours late. Mm-hmm. So as time went on, I did not enjoy visiting them or seeing them at all. And then, of course, when I was at age 9 was when they said they wanted me back. And then my mom sat me down again and said, would you like us to fight for you? And I said, absolutely. So then that started a year-long court battle.
So I want to go there, and I'm going to flip over to Johnny right now, because there's a lot there in regard to the court battle, and we have so much in your life as well. So Johnny, you are you both the same age, by the way?
I'm a little bit older, tiny bit.
And the trauma that you experienced was different, but yeah, it's trauma.
Exactly, and you heard Adrienne say 9 years old. Well, everything happened to me at 9 years old also. Mm-hmm. So up until that time, everything looked perfect on the outside. The right people, the right schools, the right clubs, the right people, the right this, the right that. I'm from a very affluent family. Mm-hmm. And but on the outside, it'll look great, but on the inside, it was absolutely a disaster. My grandparents were all very bad alcoholics, all but one. She was a teetotaler. My mother, I remember a counselor. I don't have a lot of memories of my mom up to age 9. And my counselor asked me, why don't you remember your mom? And I go, I really don't know. He said, go ask your father what he says. He goes, well, that's easy. We put her to bed every night before you got home from school because she was already intoxicated by that time. So there are flashes of memories here and there, but I don't really remember her that well. I remember at 9 years old sitting in the living room where the piano was, my parents coming to me and telling me that we're getting divorced. And
You were pretty much raised by Lizzie.
Lizzie was my nanny, and so she was my mom for all practical purposes. I still love Lizzie.
Lizzie's still alive?
Lizzie's no longer alive, but I did everything, walked the lane. I did everything with Lizzie. She was my buddy. And so Lizzie raised me until 9, and then at 9, my parents sat us down and said, we're going to get divorced. And we lived with my mom for a very brief period of time, but she wasn't capable of handling it. And she was sent away from the time I was 9 years old until I was 14. I think I saw her once, maybe twice during those 5 years. She was sent to Baltimore. Back then, there wasn't, women, there wasn't a lot of AA for women. There wasn't a lot of recovery for women back then. They were pretty much just kind of hidden away. So she was taken to Baltimore, and I didn't really see much of her until I was 14.
Where in Baltimore was she?
I'm not really sure exactly where she was. She was in treatment for a little while, and then she got an apartment, and she stayed there, and she ended up meeting a man who was in the Navy, who at 14, she came back to St. Louis, and she was married to him. And so we had a big court battle as well at age 14, where my brother and my sister, who are both younger, were forced to live with my mother and him. And since I was 14, I was able to make a decision, and I decided to live with my dad. In retrospect, I wish I would have all stayed together one way or another, but that's what the court decided at that time. And
Sure.
so
You would have most likely have been the person taking care of your siblings, right?
if I was,
stayed there.
I was. And it was a disaster over at my mom's house. As you can, both of them were bad alcoholics. And in the book, if you recall, I dated a girl for 7 years, never met my mother. None of my friends ever met my mother. There was no way I was going to bring anybody around because I didn't know what kind of condition they would find. Well, I did know what kind of condition, but I didn't want anybody to know that.
Yeah, but the generational wealth the affluence that you came from
Yes.
really supported her in her alcoholism.
No consequences, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So she could do what she wanted to do. It was a very powerful family. But she really didn't leave the house much. She was my memories of my mom. So she came back when I was 14, is her passed out on a couch in her nightgown. Mm-hmm. And I remember standing over her about that age, 14 or 15, and I had already started experimenting, saying, like, I'm never going to become like my mom. I'm never going to be an alcoholic, because I had seen what it had done. So,
But no matter what you say, it still is, once you start drinking or participating in any type of drugs, then it really hits you.
once the match was lit, I was off to the races.
Right.
And I never drank socially. I never drank just to have a drink. I was always one of those, blackout, go all the way. Once I started, I wasn't stopping no matter what for the next 25 years.
So what hit me, I grew up this was in the 70s that you were, right?
Yep.
So I grew up in the 70s. I was in high school, and same thing. But what hit me was that you didn't have consequences either, that the police would stop you for drinking, but say, well, follow me home, or let me give you a drive home, right?
Exactly right. And name recognition goes a long way. Also back then. And they weren't giving DWIs out until a couple of years after, as you know, like probably 80,
Yeah, we looked that up, actually. My son and my husband are both lawyers.
Oh, okay.
And my son is a public defender, and so he does defend people with DUIs, but he said the same thing. There wasn't a law that you couldn't drive or drink, so there wasn't any consequences they could give you, actually, other than taking you home.
Right. There were no consequences. I remember when my first friend got a DWI, the big thing was to write them up in the newspaper, and that was supposed to embarrass you more than anything else. And there was no jail, there was no prison, there was no, there weren't any consequences. So they knew me, we didn't really leave the county that I grew up in or the town that I lived in. And so they go, oh, here's Lipscomb again. We'll just follow him home. And we'll call his parents and let him know that he made it home safely. So there were no consequences. And I'm not going to say I could have committed murder and gotten away with it, but not far off of that. There just weren't consequences for the affluent back then. Yeah.
So 25 years, it's quite a long time.
I was a daily blackout drinker pretty much for 25 years. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
But you were able to fortunately survive that. And were any of your siblings also?
My sister, actually, she's pretty much stayed away from her for the most part. She has some of the other isms, because the way we grew up, it was horrific how we grew up, and what she saw, specifically what my brother saw, was really bad. He's 6 years younger, and he grew up under my mom and her alcoholic husband, and he went through a lot of abuse, physical, emotional abuse. So he got the worst of it, and and truth be told, today he's not doing all that great. It still affects him. He's 60 now. He's managed to make it to 60, which knock on wood. But he's doing okay right now. But he took the brunt of it for sure. Yeah.
Well, that's a lot for any child to recover from.
Yeah, to witness what he witnessed, and
What age was your mom when she passed?
She was 47, same age as Adrienne's mom was 47 too. So that's the same. The parallels and the similarities are really.
That's incredible.
That's why everybody say you guys really should, write a book. You have so many similarities, but yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get to where you both met each other, but I'm going to go back to Adrienne.
Okay.
And you say a court battle. I actually had been through that myself with my children in California, but it was in the 90s.
Oh, wow.
So I had a better outcome, but you on page 81 of the book, you had the judge state, the rights of parents are paramount. This is something you can argue from now until doomsday, but I have to go by the law. I just can't believe the parents, no matter what. And both of your parents were unfit in today's standards, right, to care for children.
Right.
But it's either you had a place to go.
Right.
But by law, your parents couldn't adopt you at that time.
Correct.
So ultimately, tell us about what happened.
So actually, I know it went on for a year. However, the final thing was an interview. I had an interview with the judge, and my biological sister had an interview. I think she sounded great because she was running a household at age 11. She met Elaine only a couple years before me because she was being raised in Florida. So she was very mature for her age, as we know adult children of alcoholics usually are. And I just remember being scared to death and saying, I'll hurt myself, I'll kill myself if you make me go back to them. So the day that Elaine came to get me, she was supposed to come before, but was a no-show. So the agency drove her out, and every news media, every newspaper was on my front lawn, all our neighbors. Ironically, since writing the book and speaking all over South Florida, I have met people who were there that day.
Wow.
And the niece of the judge was at one of our last book talks before COVID, and that gave me chills.
Wow.
It's the only time I've actually was crying at one of our book talks.
That's incredible. I have goosebumps.
Yeah.
What did the niece have to say about it?
She said that he had to do what the law said. And at that time, also, they were on methadone programs. They appeared rehabilitated. However, it was anything but. When the first year or two, they tried to keep it together. But I also think so I went to Brooklyn. The schools go up to 8th grade. My sister was a straight A student. So they didn't really know anything else. But what I moved into was absolute chaos, filth, 2 dogs, 10 cats. And my mom, on Long Island, our house she was fastidious. And then, and then the alcohol. And it got progressively worse.
So they were using alcohol and on methadone.
And I know that they were using other substances because my biological father would be in the bathroom locked in there for hours. So they were anything but sober.
What was how many years were you with him?
It was 4.5 years. I'll try and keep it short. So at the third year, Elaine started disappearing, which apparently was her MO, like not coming home. We left in the middle of the night. And then we lived with Herb for a year. And then my sister started high school and started flunking out. So he said, now you have to go live with Elaine. And so the end was Elaine. We were living with Elaine, my sister and I, in another apartment in Brooklyn. At the end, there was no electricity.
Oh, my goodness.
She was on food stamps. I was allowed to see my parents every 6 weeks, and I spoke to my mom once a week. She suggested writing a letter to the judge, which I did, and then he called the foster agency and intervened. We were all there. Elaine wouldn't let me go back to my parents. She wouldn't let my sister go back with the grandmother, aunt and uncle. We lived with a family upstate New York because my sister had met this really neat family. Herb packed us up and he said, Elaine will either die or be in jail within the next year. We get there, we're living there. 6 months later, she went in to get her methadone. She was jaundiced and died of liver failure at Coney Island Hospital. And that's when after that, I said, can I please go home? And he brought me home.
Wow.
He slept on it and drove me to Long Island.
Why do you think Elaine was insisting, even though she couldn't care for you, insisting on you staying with her?
She was spiteful. I think she really hated me. The abuse was always directed at me, not at my biological sister. I just think she was a very sick, unhealthy woman and in the grips of the disease.
Sure. And are you still in touch with you have a relationship with your biological sister?
I do not. It's like hit and miss.
Wow.
We talk for a few years and then we don't. So,
Wow.
yeah.
A big part of your life that obviously, again, trauma, a lot of trauma. And from your biological parents, your adopted parents' home, where was your journey at that point? Where did you go? After high school,
After high school, we moved to California. My dad was a film editor, and then I went to college at San Diego State. I struggled in school. I was told I'd never go to college, so don't tell me I can't do something. I put myself through school. I paid for it. I graduated, and then I met my ex-husband shortly after, who was in a surgery residency, and then he finished his cardiac fellowship, and then we moved to Iowa City, Iowa. But when I met him, I was living in LA. I was seeing my parents all the time. Life was good.
until it wasn't.
I always say, my mom said, marry a doctor or a lawyer. So, I married the doctor.
From Long Island, right?
From Long Island, a doctor or a lawyer. And, but, I thought that'll fix everything. But it didn't. I don't know if you want me to go into that or...
Yes. Why don't we go there, and then I'm going to go back to Johnny.
So, without getting into a lot of detail, he's a heart surgeon, very controlling. Initially, things were subtle. Like, I would be gone for a while. Where were you? But then as time went on, and I know this in hindsight, low self-esteem, haven't dealt with any of my trauma. I just gave in and then I'm married several years, and I am scared to death to go into Target and leave my phone in the car because I'm going to get screamed and yelled at. And then, as time went on, I had surgery on my cervical spine, and I was always cognizant that if I take pain pills, if I take opiates, like I have this history, so I always got off it right away. However, I had a second surgery, and now, unbeknownst to me, he's overspending. And now he's pushing alcohol on me with the pills.
Oh, wow.
So it was really sick and very sad.
And you have children
I have three.
from that relationship.
Yes, I have 3 daughters. I believe God has put people in my life my entire journey. My first best friend, Polly, was in AA. And I got off all this medicine with the head of the pain clinic. And then I noticed he was drinking a lot. And I called Polly. She said, mark the bottles. I did it for a week. She said, stop marking the bottles. I'm taking you to Al-Anon. So that was my introduction into 12-step.
Got it. And this was in Iowa.
This is in Iowa. And then we moved to St. Louis. We foreclosed on a 10,000 square foot home that he insisted on building. And we're fighting. It's awful. It's my biggest regret that my girls have witnessed all this chaos. And then I had another surgery, and now I'm just like, I don't know how to get out. Because we're financially stuck. We're paying the IRS. We're renting a house. His family's there. They don't really care for me. So my solution was the pills. Until, my youngest daughter was diagnosed with a chronic illness, and I was going to Al-Anon and group therapy. And I said to my therapist, I need help. And within a week, I was in rehab for 90 days in Orange County.
Wow. Well, good for you.
Thank you.
And AA continue to
yes.
support you.
So I look and I'm like, oh my goodness, there's a AA meeting 2 doors from my house. And it meets every day at 7 a.m. And it was like a no-brainer. I just started going. And of course, the first meeting I go to, I meet this handsome gentleman.
First meeting, wow.
And I go to get coffee, and he said, you look really familiar. And I said, well, you put in a couple of dog fences for me.
So you had a business putting in dog fences?
Invisible fences, yes.
Oh,
That's
nice.
what they did. So, yeah. So it was the second fence when they moved there.
Yeah.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
So you were also married at one point.
Yes.
And children?
Yes, 2 children, a son, a daughter and a son. And so we, after I made it through college somehow and moved to Texas for a little while where I was married. But the drinking just escalated. It just continued from 15, that was kind of more of high school weekends. And then college was more on a daily basis. And then once I got out of college, it was daily, blackout drinking from that point on. But I was married about age 30, and I had a daughter right away and a son. And we moved back to St. Louis when my daughter was born. And once I got back to St. Louis, I just hooked back up with all my old friends. And that just took right off with the drinking. Then my son came along. They're 2 years apart. So she was 4 and he was 2 when I really started getting deep into it. And I like to say, I skipped off the bottom, then I finally fell in. And the one memory that's just burned in my brain, they were 4 and 2, and I remember backing out of my driveway to go be involved in this alcoholic affair with this girl, and they're waving to me goodbye. And it's just crushing, but I would have done anything to anybody to get what I wanted. It didn't matter what was in my way. And to this day, I'll go to my grave with that, burned into my memory. Wow. So It was really sad, but that's how far I was gone. And I still went
And
another
how did
6
you
or
get
7
into
years.
treatment?
I didn't get in for another like 6 years after that. So I was a 3-year-long divorce. I was accused of everything under the sun. So I just drank. I saw a counselor a few years after I got sober, and he goes, "It was probably lucky you were drinking. I don't know if you would have made it through with everything I had to go through, all the court appearances and just the accusations just went on and on. A lot of it because of my family, and
Sure.
so just the name. And so it was around a year before I got sober. I got sober January 5th of 1999. And so about a year before, all of a sudden I noticed I'm starting to drink in the morning, like 5:30 in the morning. And I would just get up and just gag down a warm beer and basically throw it up, just anything to make me feel better. It's the only way I could get through the day. And then I started drinking through the day. And somewhere that fall, the fall of 98, I got my third DWI.
Oh, wow.
And my attorney at the time, he was a mafia attorney because that's who my family used. And so he goes, one more and I'm not going to be able to get you out of anything. So you need to straighten this up. Well, of course, I didn't do that. I kept drinking. And then it was my 40th birthday, December 17th is my birthday. I was there by myself, 2 dogs, myself, and a case of beer and a magnum of wine. I'd chase everybody out of my life at that point. You know, friends were gone, family's gone, my wife was long gone, the kids were gone. There was nothing there. There was nothing left. And basically, unconsciously, I just quit eating. And I just drank. I started drinking around the clock. Every 2 hours, I would drink and pass out and drink and pass out. Luckily, it was cold. I couldn't do a lot of work outside because my business involved being outside. So I was able to do that, and I just maintained that for 2 or 3 weeks. And January 4th, I called my ex-girlfriend, the one who I had the affair with, called her to chew her out, but her mother got on the phone and she loved me to death. I've always been big fans of my girlfriend's mothers, wonder why, right? So she goes, if I set up an appointment with you, will you go see if you're an alcoholic? And she knew good well that I was an alcoholic. And I said yes for whatever reason. If she didn't answer that phone, I wouldn't be here today. My dad came over a few days before that to try and do his own intervention at 8 in the morning. I'd already had a magnum of wine by 8 o'clock in the morning. And I threw him out of the house and said, just get the F out of here. For whatever reason, I listened to her.
Wow.
And at 8 o'clock the next morning, I remember it was one of the coldest days on record in St. Louis. All that was left, I had IRS problems. I had all sorts of financial problems. I had an old beat up work truck left. That's all I had. And so I show up. And I remember when I got back in that truck after I got out of detox, there were still 9 beer cans in there floating around. I'm driving around like this, which is just insanity looking back. But I'm walking down the hall. It was called Edgewood. I'm walking down the hall and I pass a room. It's 8 o'clock. All these people are laughing and hugging and having a good time. I go, what in the world are they doing? What are they so happy about at 8 o'clock? I had no idea what was going on. I remember looking into a mirror and went to the restroom, looked in the mirror, and there's a 90-year-old man looking back at me. The whites of my eyes were yellow. My skin was yellow. It's just I'd aged, the problems. I had no idea who was staring back. I went downstairs to fill out the 20-question John Hopkins test. Second test of my life, I got 100 on. But I was going to get up and walk out anyway. And they go, where are you going? I was shaking at the DT so bad I couldn't sign paperwork. I couldn't sign anything. And I was getting up to leave, and they said, where are you going? I go, well, I'm going home. They go, no, you need to stay here. So they made an emergency call to my primary. They said, what drugs can you take or not? They were scared to death I was going to have a heart attack or stroke because I haven't eaten in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And so I was in really, really bad shape. And but to answer your question, if she didn't answer that phone, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here today. There's no way. I wasn't going to answer to my parents. I wasn't going to answer to friends. So just for whatever reason, just that if they were at a movie, I wouldn't be here today. Just that one.
Did you go back to her and thank her?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's on my 10-year I did, on my 20-year I did. Absolutely. She's in the book. And,
awesome.
So I love her. She knows I love her. And so I wouldn't be here without her. So that was really that's what got me in that day.
And how long after you started going to AA did you meet Adrienne?
So I went, so I got out, I was only in detox because insurance won't cover more than like 5 days back then. So when I got out, I was still shaking. I was lost. I had nobody waiting for me at home.
So you didn't go to 90 days of free?
No, I went 5 days of detox, and that was it. And but they made us go to a meeting every morning. That was that meeting at 8:00 in the morning. Those were all those people hugging and laughing and having a good time. So they put me on a heavy dose of Librium, so it feels like you're in slow motion. So I would go up to that meeting every morning and sit in the back and hope nobody knew who I was. And so I got out and I went home. I go, well, now what am I going to do? It's cold, it's dark, nobody's around. I made a decision to go to those meetings. And so I went every morning at 7:00 in the morning. I went to that meeting. And then bit by bit, I got a little more comfortable. And then somebody came and go, you're a Lipscomb, aren't you? And I go, oh, no, they found out. But like everybody knew. I mean, everybody's known my whole life since I was a teenager. I was in trouble, and people told me that. So it wasn't some well-kept secret. So I would go every day, and then I started going. I had a burning bush moment at 6 weeks, and we can go back to later and visit if you want. But right at 6 weeks, I was uncomfortable. I was miserable. I hated my life. I hated everything about it. I didn't want to go to AA. I didn't have any friends inside. Didn't have any friends outside. So what was I going to do? And at 6 months, my counselor made me write a letter to my mom. And that was the change for me. That was my burning bush. I had no idea the anger and the resentment that I had towards my mom. It took me about 3 hours to write a 2-page letter, bawling all the way through. And so I went in. Her name was Barbara. She was a little short lady. And I threw her on her desk and I go, I'm done. She goes, you're not done. I go, what do you mean? She goes, now you got to read it. I was going to outpatient. And she goes, you need to read it in front of your outpatient group, which is about 14. So I got up to read it. And while I'm reading it, I'm bawling again. And I literally felt this dark gray cloud lift off of my shoulder. And since that day, I haven't had a desire or compulsion to drink. I mean, it's truly, I'm one of the fortunate ones. It left me 100% at that point. And here we are 26 years later. And then I dove all in. I was 100% in AA. I went to 2 or 3 meetings a day. We go around the room to those 14 people. They go, how many meetings you go to? And they go, I went to 1, or I didn't go to any, or I went to 3. And they get to me, I went to 21. They go, oh my God. But none of those people are left. And here I am. They all died, moved on. Who knows what happened to them. So I was sober for about 5 years, 2005, when Adrienne came to the room to answer your questions. So
strong. And you went into the invisible fence business at what point?
Well, I was in it beforehand. So somehow I hung on to it because they were threatening to take it away. And then it boomed, and I became the market leader. And, I sold it years later. And this amazing, my life, all the IRS problems fell aside. My friends, 400 friends came back to me. I made a zillion more in AA. Adrienne came to my life. Her girls came to my life. The dogs came. It's like I was out of prison. Yeah. I had an enormous pink cloud that is just almost impossible. I called my counselors because I was so worried. I didn't know what was happening to me because, I drank for 25 years like that. I was being released from prison, and I thought I was floating, literally floating on the ground. I called them, something's just not right. And I talked to 2 of them, yeah.
So I want to go back to where you said you were able to release that with that letter from your mom, which actually is a very, very trauma-inducing moments, you said hours it took you to do this, but the release that you experienced took you away from drugs and alcohol. I've actually heard that more and more recently, is that if you get to the core of what is really driving you in your life like that, driving you to do whatever addiction there may be, and that addiction could be, actually I'm going to have Dr. Marks on. She wrote several books. I mean, you know her, Adrienne, right? So she, Exit the Maze is basically her book that we're going to talk about. I'm getting a little preview here, but exiting that maze is finding that core of where the addiction, because so many people go from alcohol to weight or food to cigarettes to whatever, shopping,
they substitute
gambling, substitution.
Yeah. Right.
And to get to the core, there's no substitution because you have that release. So I wanted the listeners to hear this.
I agree and have supported that ever since it happened to me. I mean, because it changed my life literally overnight. So I've recommended it to people, even in the book. We've had a lot of people call, text us, email us. We hear from a lot of people. One guy called me crying, and he goes, I just want to thank you for the letter you wrote to your mom, because I replicated it and I just got back from my mom doing it, and I can't tell you how much it helped. And I was just fortunate that it happened to me in 6 weeks. I mean, I think it's in everybody's, like, you see a lot of people who get sober and they kind of like, and it's great that they're sober, and I think it's outstanding, but they kind of just like to stay sober and their lives kind of stay the same. I hit that and I just went off like a rocket ship. And I've seen people who do that, who find what the root cause was, for lack of a better term, and their lives take off like a rocket ship. So I always encourage, when I sponsor people or help people, which we've done a lot of, obviously, like, if you can find that root cause, typically is in childhood. You could answer that better than I can, but typically is in childhood, typically is with mothers. You know, if you can find, unfortunately, yeah, I know,
Yeah.
sorry.
I know.
It just seemed, well, even in the beginning of the book, so my stepsister's father is a noted psychiatrist in Houston. And if you read the beginning of the book, my stepsister asked him, so if you had to sum up psychology in a sentence, and he went on with all this psychobabble and stuff, and then she goes, no, one sentence, and he said, if I know the relationship a child had with his or her mother, then I can help that person. I didn't realize how powerful that was. That was after the book was written, but we put it in there because it's so powerful and affects us. So that was the root of my life just took off, and I've never looked back, and I see that happen a lot. So you're 100% accurate that if you can find that, what that is in my case. And I had no idea. No, I didn't know my mom. I had no idea the abandonment issues I had. So, yeah. So I was one of the fortunate ones.
Yeah, I know someone, and they actually discounted the fact that their mother abandoned them at 3 years old and blamed everything on the stepmom. But then realized through some group sessions and therapy that she left this abandonment issue aside and didn't account for it. But that's huge.
Yeah, it is huge. And like I said, I had no idea. It wasn't even on my radar screen when she told me to write this letter. I was going like, why do you want me to write a letter to my dead mother? I don't really even know her that well. But the profound effect it had on me, obviously, was amazing.
Very bright therapist, obviously.
Yeah. So thank her to this day too. Yeah.
And you, Adrienne, you did say how many years have you been married?
We got married in 2017, but we've been together since 2005. Yeah. So we've been together a long time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Coming up 20 years this summer, actually. Yeah.
And the core obviously must have been your biological parents.
Yes.
For you.
I mean, I had a little different experience early on in sobriety. My ex, I knew, was having an affair, and he had moved out, and I was just scared to death. I was just angry, scared. Now I have my youngest with this chronic illness, and then I had a spiritual awakening that came in a dream. And it was like, once that happened, I mean, it was, I don't know, we weren't together yet, but I was standing in the driveway with the girls, and I was like waving goodbye to my ex. Or no, he was taking the girls, which actually never happened. But but in this dream,
God,
right? In this dream, and someone was beside me, and there was like this warm glow, and he says it was him, but I don't know, it was him or God, but like I knew.
You felt protected.
I felt protected for the first time in a long time. I didn't know the extent of the PTSD I had, just even from my ex-husband, because I married Elaine. I I married my mother. And so even, I've done I did therapy early on, but even like in the last few years, I've gone back and I've done so much more work because we've been together a very long time. And this was not recently, but let's say like 10 years ago, like I'm shopping on Atlantic Avenue and I'm like it's 4:00, like, oh, I better call, I better check in, or I'm like, oh no, you don't have to do that. Like that's how long that trauma, that being hypervigilant stayed with me. Like it's kind of crazy.
Yeah. There's things that you don't expect necessarily that someone will do or say that triggers something.
Right.
That will bring that. And something like that happened to me the other day where somebody said something and it wasn't a great thing that they said, but the way I reacted to it, I'm like, okay, what was about that?
Right.
And now I can look back at that. And we had a conversation, this person and I, and she said, that's not exactly what I do usually. And I'm like, well, I know that I reacted because it was a trigger. And now that we've talked about it, it's over.
Right.
We know all about it. But to have those conversations with people about what triggers us or what may have triggered us, because those things are important in relationship building, right?
Absolutely. And I can now have those conversations with my girls. My middle daughter is kind of the last to do, like she was slow doing therapy, doing her work. She struggles with anxiety. And so we can have these like conversations and I can and I could talk too much. So I'm like, tell me if this is going to upset you. Like just tell me, and I've also learned to like not to active listening and say, do you want a suggestion? But it's hard because I'm also a sober coach and I want to get in there and I have to just pause and listen and I'm kind of watching them grow. Like my youngest daughter is like blows me away. But she's done a lot of work. They've all been through a lot.
Sure. And my daughter told me, this is quite a few years ago, she says, Mom, don't coach me. I'm like, okay.
It's what I do.
But as for you, working with us at Feinberg Consulting as a recovery coach, and specifically those people that are using opiates for medical reasons, quote, medical reasons, and getting in there is you're good at because you've experienced it.
Right.
And life is about our journey in both our education and our experience. And I think the experience is more advantageous than the education because we can really understand it better.
Yeah.
And have some empathy towards people.
Lots of empathy. You have to. And yeah, I can kind of meet them where they're at and really understand their trauma and where they're coming from. So, and have a lot of patience.
Sure. So in parting words, what else would you like to share about your story and what you currently continue to do? I know, Adrienne as a recovery coach, and I know you're in real estate. And how do you continue to work in your recovery?
So I'm in luxury real estate, which I need to stay busy. I think every addict needs to be as busy as they possibly can be because, Sure. Idle time is the devil's workshop, and it's very true with addicts. So for a period of time, I did sell my business. We did move here, and, I was playing golf and tennis, and I was going to go jump off a bridge. I was miserable. So now I'm busier than I ever need to be, but I work better that way, and I'll probably do it to the day I die. So I'm in real estate, and I do well at that. I'm also a writer, so I helped write that book, and I wrote another book. I did a lot of work with maximum security prisoners, and it takes place on death row. It's really a powerful, powerful book. And I just finished writing a trilogy, a fictional trilogy that deals with substance abuse, but has Me Too movement in it, 23andMe, and really current events about adoption. The first book's about adoption and Who Am I, which I won't tell the whole story. The second book has to do with corrupt guardian ad litems, because we dealt with them, guardian ad litems, lawyers, judges, and the third book deals with fentanyl. And so I really enjoy writing. And really, it takes me out of my head. It gets me to put it down on paper where I can see things. So that helps me a lot. I sponsor a lot of people. I'm a sober companion too, and take trips with people. So last year I took one gentleman to a wedding up in Vermont, so he couldn't go.
That's good to know. I did not know that.
Yes, he couldn't go otherwise, you know. And so I took him to that, and about a month later, I took a gentleman to his son's engagement party in Raleigh, North Carolina, and it's like, if it were me in that situation, I just couldn't bear it if I had to miss an important event like that, when it's easy enough for me just to hop on a plane with them and go and enjoy that time. The family, they treat me like family, basically, and I'm just there just in case, or if they have any questions, and so they're able to at least attend those important functions, because you hear so many alcoholics when they come in the rooms like, I missed this event, and I missed that event, you brought it up.
Continues to be problematic if they're missing some really important events. Those are life events that they should celebrate.
Right.
And there's no reason that has to happen. And so I'm available to do that also. So I keep my feet, in the water in the recovery world, and just I need to be busy doing everything. So I do a lot of different things, and it keeps my head a little clearer. So that's what I do. Yeah.
You, Adrienne.
And I go to meetings, and I have like an amazing group of women. I'm in this recovery group, like in the last few years. And it's, I tell my clients, like, you need a network of people. We need connection to others. Like, to me, that's so important, and then going to meetings, and then having a relationship with a higher power. And, that's what keeps me happy, joyous, and free. Sure. And I just can't say enough about just staying in the middle of recovery, and, good things happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We want people to have what we have. That's all we're doing, and that's.
And guiding them in a way that they can achieve that.
Any way they can, and any way that we can be of help. We didn't write the book to make $1 million, because writing a book is not a way to make a lot of money at all. As everybody knows who's ever tried to do it, it's like digging a hole and, shoveling. But
I always admire someone who writes a book, but putting your story down must have been really cathartic for both of you.
Very cathartic, yeah. And it's funny, just kind of as a side note, I lost my father about 5 years ago, and I was having a really hard time with it, because he was there. He went to the family portion of the outpatient, which I didn't expect him to go to. He was a heavy drinker, and after that ended, he kind of went his way and I went my way. But he did go to it. And it was really important for him to be part of that. And so it's a family disease. The family needs to be involved. We're here for an example, that if we can do it, anybody can do it. If I can do it, anybody can do it.
Well, you both have had very challenging lives as children to grow up, and to be able to grow up to, go through this life and still have this amazing life now that you can both celebrate it together.
Right.
It's amazing. And there are people to help. I mean, it's a we program. It really is. And so, so when I say when my dad died, my sponsor, I called my sponsor and said, I'm having a really difficult time with this. He goes, Johnny, just do what you know how to do. I go, what? He goes, write. You know how to write. You know how to get out of this more so than anybody else I know. So,
and it doesn't mean that we don't, life obviously has challenges, but if I'm going through something, I have women texting me, calling me, checking in on me.
You're not isolated.
I'm not isolating. How lucky am I? That's the way I look at it. I don't. I was told, even when I walked into Al-Anon, you don't ever have to do anything alone ever again. And it's so true, a 12-step. And it's hard to understand people just resist it when it's such a gift.
It's an uncomfortable place for people to be sometimes in the beginning until they can.
In the beginning.
Yeah. For them to take the time to continue it.
Well, and ask for help. It's the hardest thing, or pick up the 500-pound phone. It's almost impossible. But if we can impress anybody, it's like pick up the phone. Reach out for help, because it's there and gave us these amazing lives that I wouldn't be here. So
Sure. Well, thank you both for coming in.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it, and I'm going to show this book, Painting and the Piano, and I recommend it for anyone who really wants to know more about this story, and a story of hope and resilience. Thank you for joining the conversation today. If you are seeking help for yourself or a loved one, please reach out to our Feinberg Consulting team at 248-538-5425. That's 248-538-5425. And check out our website at feinbergcare.com. I'm grateful for our guests and all who have joined us today. Make sure you follow us on Apple, Spotify, or anywhere you listen to podcasts.